2nd, 2011, Harb meeting. We have two projects tonight. We have Harb 2011-8, 323 Conestoga Road. Is someone here to present? Can you come forward?
Good evening, everybody. Some of you,
evening.
I'm sorry.
Pull the mic up a little bit.
Sure.
Thank you.
Like this? Very good. Yeah, some of you will remember me from the November 2nd meeting. Alan Freed's my name. With me is Mr. Ron Bishop, who is the owner of Corner to Corner Construction, gentleman over here, and they will be doing the work. And I know everybody else is here because they want to hear what I have to say. So, how would you like, should I proceed? You're going to ask me some questions?
If you could describe the work
Sure.
you're going to be doing and what is going to change, and
Sure.
as you are doing that, do you have those pictures and the sketch with you? If you could put them on the table
Yes.
as you do them, and as you are pointing to things, if you could make
Right.
sure people can hear you in the microphone,
Okay.
that'd be
very
great.
good. All right. Basically, we live in a split level on Conestoga Road, of course. It's on the perimeter of the historical zone, and it's right between Audubon and South Wayne. And we are, as the title says, we would like to...
Sir, if you have the pictures there,
I'm just
place
about
them
to
on the
put-
table while you're talking, so that
okay.
everyone can see.
Spread them all out?
Yeah, that'll be fine.
Sure, I was going to do that. All right, I'll do like that. Okay.
And you can look up here and see kind of how you're lined up. There you go. Thank you.
Okay, well, the bottom pictures here and here, these two pages, show the existing porch. On the left, just two views, and this is obviously in the back of the house. From two sides, this picture of what the porch looks like. On here, you have close-ups of what it looks like. And the upper right-hand corner is just a view of the house from the front. Now, we want to...
Oh, sir,
Sure.
speak into the mic.
Okay. We would like to remove that porch. It's on a concrete base, and after it's taken down, okay, thank you. After the base is, after the porch is taken down, the concrete base will remain, and it's obviously rectangular, and we want to cover that base with a stone patio. All right, I'll point here. This drawing is, the top of this drawing, left to right, is the, well, I'm pointing exactly to the floor diagram of the existing porch, and I'm going to move down here. It will be, shows you the patio, which basically replaces the existing porch, although it extends off to the right here a little bit in a circular way. And the other feature of this drawing is this dashed line here. This will be where the iron railing will go, and it's there for partly aesthetics, but partly so someone would not fall off the edge of the left-hand side of this patio, because it's about 6 inches above the ground. There is a small gutter running up and down the left side here. So it's fairly straightforward. And yes, if there are any other questions, I'll answer them, but that's basically what's going on.
You know the year of the house? Do you know what?
The house was built approximately 1954. We've lived in it since 1985. The porch was built a few years later by my mother-in-law, who no longer lives there, and it's just got to the point where we feel we'd be better off with a patio.
So the porch was not original, and there probably was a patio, and you're going back to a patio.
Well, actually, there was grass. There was just
okay.
grass before, but no, it was definitely not original, right, yeah.
And as far as I could tell, this is nothing that you would be able to see from the street.
That's for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Any questions?
No?
I'll make a motion.
Motion to approve a certificate of appropriateness?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Well, excellent.
Passes.
Thank you very much.
Now, to remind you, this is just the Harb submission you've gone through and gotten approval. All that, your next step is that this will go to the Board of Commissioners for their approval, and then you still have to go through building permits or whatever from here on out. So it's not like tomorrow you can take a sledgehammer out, okay?
Put away the slip bin.
So it's
Okay,
just,
yeah.
it's part of the process, but just so you're clear.
Very, very good.
Okay, you'll get a letter that states you've been approved,
Okay.
and then go from there.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that you probably will need a little bit more of a drawing than this, but you can talk to Ray Daly about that.
Okay. At some point, I will need a more detailed drawing.
For construction of the terrace
Okay.
or the patio, yeah.
Okay. Very good.
But that's, you can talk to him about that, he'll tell you what he needs,
Excellent.
okay?
Thank you very much, and thank you for that I was able to do this abbreviated application form, which saved a lot of money. Thanks very
You're
much.
welcome. You can leave it right there. Okay, next on the agenda is Harb 2011-09, 40 Luella Court. Restore existing building and build 12 two-car garages adjacent to existing building.
How you doing?
Can you introduce yourself and
Sure, absolutely. My name is Dave Falcone. I'm with Saul Ewing. I'm here on behalf of C.F. Holloway III and Company, who is the equitable owner of the property located on Luella Court, 40 Luella Court. We are here tonight based on the application, really is twofold. Our application is to construct 12 new garages, which you can see on the plans here, which is presently on an area that's an existing parking lot, as well as an area that houses an existing garage. We are also here to discuss the renovation, the restoration of the existing building, which is presently 25 apartment units into 12 condominiums. With respect to the process, we're here really to discuss our facade and what we're looking to propose, specifically with respect to the garages as their new construction, but would certainly be open to answering any questions or entering into any discussion with respect to the facade of the building. Probably the most important person here with me this evening, aside from Kaz, would be Tim Wentz, who's with Gate 17 Architecture, and they've put together these renderings, and he could speak probably most effectively to the types of materials we are proposing and the types of facades and roofs and things like that. So I'd be happy to turn it over to him, but would be willing to enter or to answer any questions on the legal front, should they arise.
could someone start with a site plan and describe the changes, what's existing and what is going to be proposed?
Sure. So what we have here is an aerial photograph of the areas that exist now. As you can see, the building in that area, if I could go to this, Mike. The building here, located towards the middle, there's an existing garage which is hatched, which is going to be removed. This area right here, surrounded in a darker line, is the proposed area for the garages. It's an existing parking area now. Again, this is the existing garage. You'll notice that the property extends all the way down to Lancaster Avenue. That's part of the 40 Luella property, as well as the existing planting area which is located in the middle. That's currently leased to the township through a lease agreement, which we have a copy of. The existing building will remain. As you can see from the table to the right, there is existing 7,413 square feet. Our proposed building, meaning the living space, will remain 7,413 square feet. The garage area, again, will be completely new. The existing garage is insignificant at 620 feet, but the proposed garage would be 6,070 square feet. The issue that would come up later during the zoning process, but which is on the plan, and I'll point out, is building coverage and impervious coverage. Calculations
Excuse me. We will not cover zoning tonight.
Okay.
Historical review only. Thank you.
With that in mind, then that's the existing site plan. Our proposal, you can see 6 garages on the north side, 6 on the south. Similar in construction.
May I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
Have you gone through any other boards before you appear before us?
You are our first stop.
So in fact, the allowable space may change significantly depending on zoning or some other board?
Excuse me.
Excuse me, John. I won't entertain that tonight. That's not an acceptable question by the board.
Well, the reason I bring that up,
No, yours,
just let me finish.
go ahead.
If the building envelope, if what they're allowed to build changes dramatically, it affects the historical nature of the whole thing, the scale, the facade, other issues pertaining to that. What might work at a certain scale doesn't work somewhere else. That's all.
It still doesn't pertain to the actual look of this building, whether there's 12 garages or 10 garages. It's not going to make any difference. We're strictly in the historical review tonight. Not planning, not zoning, not parking.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, right. This is not shade tree, it's not open space, but we do take into account scale from a historical perspective. So there may be some relevance to that.
Can you describe the current traffic pattern? How do you get into the current driveway and how this will behave once this would be put into place?
Excuse me, how you enter the driveway does not pertain to the historical things that you can ask. I must remind you, let's stick to the historical.
Well, let me answer that. Is that if we have a 12-block garage and the remaining site is all driveway, that has an impact on historical, I think, an historical scale. So I understand what you're saying, but all right, let's move on. I guess if you want to go into elevations and talk about heights and lengths and widths and how you connect, is there a plan that shows a first floor plan and how you connect to the building, or?
Tim. Let him show on that plan where the connection is.
My name's Tim Wentz with Gate 17 Architecture. The garage plan that was submitted to you, I'm going to be referring to it here. To answer your question about building width and building length, the building width is 49 feet. We have an approximate 20-foot deep garage, a 5-foot corridor to gain access from the inside of the building to the existing building, and we are 121 feet 10 inches long. We have a small room that's located here next to the existing house that is going to house a dumpster for trash so that there will be no dumpsters outside as there presently are. Now, with regards to the elevations, you can see at the top of the sheet, we have our north elevation, which is facing the train tracks, the east side elevation, which is facing the circle, and the south elevation, which would be facing Lancaster Pike. The predominant architecture of the existing building is stucco with stone surrounding the windows and a mansard roof. So what we're proposing for the garages, and it's probably best shown on the east side elevation, is stucco, the same detail surrounding the windows, and also a mansard roof. Now you can see from the side elevation that the property is high on the north side and it's low on the south side. So what we're going to do is to maintain a straight roof line, and so that the building on the north side will be 16 feet high, and the building on the south side, because it's dropped down to meet the street, is going to be 18 feet 4 inches high.
Excuse me, do you have an east view with the house behind it? That'd be good to look at. Do you have anything like that?
We do not. We
Okay.
have a elevation, a photograph of the east elevation of the house.
Okay,
I think you could probably, it's in your package.
right.
You don't have that one superimposed, one on the other though, right?
Probably the last one. No, that's the west side.
I guess that's the closest thing I have to this.
Now, also from the black and white drawings that were submitted to you, and you can see on this east side elevation that okay, here is the east side elevation of the house.
Right. And this is going to be separate from that building, right? It's not going
Yes.
to be connected?
It's connected by, if you go back to the plan, this 5-foot corridor is actually going to be at the same height as the basement. So people will be able to go from their garage, they'll be going down steps internal
okay.
in the garage itself and accessing the basement of the house.
I see.
And so the connection to the house is not only narrower than the garage itself, but it's not as high as the garage. And you can see that from this elevation on the south side. In other words, this is the link right here, and what you're looking at is the trash
Yep,
room.
yep, you see it. Mhm.
So we're also taking the ornamental fascia and soffit detail of the existing mansion, and we're going to mimic that in the garage also. The color palette will be the same as the garage, as the house, and the doors will probably be some type of a wood, probably a mahogany color.
So I've got a 45-foot wide, basically, building that's 120 feet long. And where does that line up with the existing house?
It's approximately dead center. Now, again, if I were to go to the site plan,
So if I'm looking at, I guess there's a fire escape in that slot on the east elevation that has stairs.
that's correct, and that's actually off-center.
Okay, so you're talking about entering into the opening that's to the left on that?
Yes, where there's an existing basement door.
And going in there?
Goes directly into the basement.
And what happens to the egress that's there now?
That's going to remain.
No, the steps.
No, you mean to the basement?
The
Or
steps
the-
that go up to the...
The fire escape?
Fire escape, yeah.
Yeah, that's going to remain in place. That will actually,
And all
no,
of that gets missed by all this?
no, he's talking about the fire escape.
I guess it's just hard to see how this all lines up without having it actually sketched out. I'm just, yeah, I know in plan I can see it, but in elevation, you start to line up, you know, window heights and all those kinds of things, and how it ends up aligning on the east side.
Well, one of the things that we wanted to do, and the reason why we're going in at the basement level, is so that the height of the link between the garage and the house, the roof will be underneath the windows that are on the east side elevation, so that those windows will remain in place.
Does that way you would answer the question of mine, but are you saying the roof of the garage will be lower than the bottom of the first floor east elevation? Is
It
that-
will be lower than the windows.
The windows,
The first floor windows.
the first,
Yes.
because that,
I don't know how that
I
could
don't
be.
see how that's, in my head, I can't see that's part.
Well, imagine the floor of the basement is 8 feet 10 inches below the first floor. And then you add your window height on top of that, which is probably about 2 feet. So you're at 10 feet, which will be less than the elevation of the link that goes from
Oh.
the garage to the building.
Oh, the link
the
I
link,
see, but
okay.
I'm thinking of the actual garage itself.
The
Though I know
garage
it's not
itself-
face to face, it's a solid that's gonna be, what, 4 feet off? I can't picture exactly, but,
The link is 11 feet 10 inches.
okay,
So the garage, which will actually be higher,
right.
slightly higher than the windows, will be 11 feet, 12,
11
almost
feet
12
off.
feet away.
Okay.
In terms of the material, what type of roof, for example, are you planning on putting? What are the materials for the roof?
Well, the existing roof of the existing mansion is slate, and then there's a flat section on top of that. I haven't been up on the roof, but I would suspect that it would be a hot tar roof or a cold tar roof,
But
because it's predominantly flat.
But, I mean, on the garage, since the garage is so, the roof of the garage is so prominent, what will be the material on the garage roofs? The part that you see, the mansard section?
The mansard?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be the same material as the house.
So it'll be slate on the roof?
You want to know what the house roof will be?
I'm asking about the garage.
The garage will be the same material that we put on the house when we replace. We have to replace all the existing material because we're in the process right now of doing the inspections of the property and of the house and of the roof. So the roof will be, the hot tar roof that's up there now, and that is what is up there, will be replaced with EDM, which will last longer. We're going to do a slate.
Excuse me, is that on?
It's on.
Okay, people couldn't
Can
hear.
you hear
so-
me now?
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
We believe the existing slate will have to be removed to replace the tar paper and everything underneath. And we're analyzing that, whether we will replace it with the existing slate, or we will put new slate or a slate-like material that will last, but it will have the same features and look that's there now. Our intention is to make it look, we're not going to put like red shingles
Yeah,
on
well,
the building.
I was just, I mean, I think that that's an important element
Yeah.
of both the main house and the garage, and so I think it's
The intent is to make the garage look like it's been there for as long as the house has been there. That's the intent. And that's why we gave so many pictures of the existing house and matched the detail. If you look on the elevation of the garage doors, and Tim can address this better, but this drawing shows the intricate detail of the columns, the curvature, and the floor, I guess the, what's that called? There's cutouts in the curb. So if you look at the garage doors, it has the exact detail. The top of the garage doors are curved. The columns in between the garage doors, we matched it exactly. So the intent is to make the new building look as if it was built at the same time that the house was built. And what we did do in our research, because we really wanted to see what was on the site prior, and we, with the Radnor Historical Society, which I think you're affiliated with, you can see that there originally was a large greenhouse to the right of the house. And so our building is actually lower in profile than that was. So there was originally a structure attached to the house. It just happened to be a greenhouse, not the garage. But if you look at the massing of that, it's very similar. Actually, our design is a lower profile, especially from the north side. When you look at the cars on the north elevation, this road is 2 feet higher than the apron of the garage doors. So the garage is going to appear to be even lower on that side. And of course, on the south side, that's the 2 foot 4 inch difference that Tim spoke of the 16 feet versus 18 feet 4 inches. The left side is lower to the ground, very close to the basement floor elevation. So that's why there's a difference. So this is identical to what it will look like. That's the side profile with the scale, proper scale of the cars and the existing road of Luella Court as it circles the property. So what we tried to do was really address how to marry the existing structure with something new that allows for parking, covered parking. What I'd also like to mention is the existing house has 25 units. We have 12 garages, 2-car garages. We're providing, even though it's a pre-existing structure and we're not required to follow the parking issues, we are providing 2 per unit, and we're reducing the unit count from 25 to 12. So we're really cutting the density in half in the building. So these are all the things that we really gave a lot of thought to try to marry the old with the new, or the new with the old, I guess I should.
What, can you tell me anything about the existing garage that's there now? Is there any information that's...
I don't have any information on it. It appears that it probably was built in the 50s. It's my guess. There's nothing that appears historic about it. Yeah. There's a picture of it right here.
It's earlier, but...
It certainly is not in keeping with the style of the house.
Well, typically, when you have a large kind of manor house like this and you have outbuildings, you've got, you know, sort of a higher profile, more like what's existing, and certainly smaller. I mean, this property used to be, you know, 300 acres, and then over the years, it got smaller and smaller until it's this little enclave now And, you know, this one circle is the last remaining open space for this mansion and this property. And I'm a bit concerned that this thing is a little out of scale, a lot out of scale with the original fabric that was there and what is remaining. I'm not talking about height, I'm talking about just sheer coverage. And I know you're reducing tenants or, you know, occupants and parking requirements and all those things, which is good. But I'm also concerned about open space. And, you know, under our kind of, what we're looking at from an historical standpoint, it's not only the materials and the scale of the materials, it's the scale of the, you know, building to site. And to me, this looks like it's, you know, you've used every bit of available zoning setback space to make this work, and there's not much left over. So I'm a little concerned about that. I'm also concerned that, you know, it's, even though it's, you've got all the elements in there, you've got a mansard roof on a, you know, half a story building, sort of, which makes it look even flatter. And I know what you're trying to do is to minimize this thing from a streetscape standpoint, but I'm not sure it's so long and so wide. You know, it kind of is still an overpowering element, I think. But that's, I don't know what you guys think.
I think it's curious that there was a greenhouse there before, you know, so I don't know. How are you planning on landscaping this? I mean, is it just going to be all asphalt, or are you planning on putting a lot of planting in, or how is that?
And we can't get into it.
I don't think
Oh, we
that's
can't get into that?
No.
Because the thing is, I mean, that changes the whole feeling of the site.
And I think there is an overlap in our discussion tonight of certain elements, but I would like to, it was my understanding that if we were just restoring the house, we would not have been required to come before Harb as long as we were not changing the house. Since we were adding the garage, whether it was detached or attached, and what we tried to do was really make it look like it's detached, but allows for the residents, the new residents, to be able to access the building without walking outside and coming in and going. They'll come in the basement, go right up the elevator and to their unit. What we understood was, A, we have to comply with the zoning, the impervious coverage, the building setbacks. So I understand your comment, but it's really what we were trying to do that fit the site and was allowed to be built on the site. And then we understood that the reason for coming tonight was to have you approve the finishes, whether what we're proposing is appropriate with the existing structure, both architecturally and historically. From a finish standpoint, it was not my understanding that this board would be commenting on whether or not the building fits on the site. Obviously, if it didn't meet the zoning requirements, we wouldn't be allowed to build it, and I wouldn't be here. So our understanding was this meeting is to review whether our concept, the mansard, the curvature on the garage doors, all those things are appropriate. And that's really, we're looking for that direction. This is what Tim and his group have come up with, knowing the sensitivity, and I know everybody here is, you know, very concerned. We're here to be, if this isn't appropriate as far as the finishes, we're happy to go back and look at it. But what we want to do is do something that's going to enable us to restore the original house. That's our game plan here. And the only way we can do that is to provide a satisfactory way for people to park. If you look at the pictures of what exists now, there's 19 parking spaces for 25 units. 2 are the garage, the other are 17. The trash dumpsters are right in the parking lot. And those things, and I don't want to, I mean, everybody can drive up there and see that. That's not my purpose. My thought was, how do we hide the trash dumpster? So it's worked very well in our other 2 buildings, Steeple View and Luella. At Luella, all my neighbors have their trash cans in the alley, ours are in the building. But it works very well, and it works very well for the residents. And that the new homeowners of the 12 new units that are going to be done are going to be neighbors also. And we're just trying to provide the right amenities, both for them and for the neighborhood, and that it conforms and meets. So I think the issue here is whether we're on the right track. That's, and we would love to hear from the neighbors of how they feel, because we don't want to do anything that's not welcome in the neighborhood and fits. But we feel we can do a very good job on restoring the original home, which I think we're all here for. I think everybody in this room would not argue the fact that that building really deserves to have another 100 years going forward. And the only way to do that is to provide the amenities for the people who are going to live there that would be it's worth their while. So I hope I've addressed your concern, Mr. Lacy, but that we are looking for direction here. We're not saying this has to be it from a architectural aesthetic look. You mentioned possibly the higher look. That was one of the things Tim recommended. He thought the center, if you look at the detail on the hip, on the front, he could have brought the center portion up to mimic more like the house, the main turret of the house. I instructed him not to, so that it kept the profile low for all our neighbors. So, you know, we've been going back and forth of what's appropriate and not appropriate. We're looking for direction here.
I'd like
Yes.
to make a comment, and I understand what you're saying, and restoring the main building, we're all, like you said, in agreement with. Let's restore this wonderful focal point of the whole neighborhood. My concern is, I understand the finishes and materials are very much part of the character of a building or site and neighborhood, and you're addressing that. What I don't know that you're addressing as well as perhaps a different option would be the massing of this suddenly very large, what feels like a big, almost footprint of the existing building, but not quite, and taking away the ratio of open to built. And I think that focal point of the middle of the Luella Court, and it's higher than the rest, so it's kind of this topographical pattern of large estate site with a large building and one small outbuilding is going to be dramatically changed. And I think if there's any way, I love your trash idea, covering the trash like another little separate outbuilding like the garage is now. I realize adaptive reuse for what you're doing is going to need more parking, but is there any way to create a sense that it's not like one long appendage off the building? I think that's changing or altering the character significantly.
Well, we gave that a lot of thought and looked at it. We even looked at the possibility of putting an underground garage in. First thing we looked at. I would love to be able to do it. Unfortunately, when you come into a garage, you have to have the alleyway in between and the parking spaces on either side. the building width would go to a minimum 64 feet, and it would extend over the setback lines. Even though it's underground, we've been advised that it would be outside of the building setback. So that was something we didn't have the option to do. And this is a very large building, I think, and it has a renowned history. Mr. Askin, one of the first developers in Wayne, it was, I've read different dates, either 1865 or 1875, but he built it, it was beautiful, and that's when he had his greenhouse, which was in the exact location that our proposed garage is. So historically, our garage, it's not the same use, but it's the same massing and structure. The second thing is it then became a hotel, and the wings were added, and it was an 80-room hotel. And for the last 50 or so years, it's been an apartment building for 25 residents. Many are here tonight, I think, or some are here tonight. So what we're asking for is, in order for someone, hopefully it will be us, to breathe new life into the structure for its next rebirth, would be for home ownership of 12 homeowners, as opposed to 25 apartments or a hotel or a single-family home years ago when it was much smaller. So I would say from a massing of the site, historically, what we're doing is really what was done when it was originally built. So if you would like to see this building restored, I don't know of any other way to do it than what we're proposing.
Excuse me, just to make clear, do you
Yes.
or your company own this property at this
We're
point?
the equitable owner. We're in our due diligence period. We haven't closed on the property yet. We have it under agreement of sale.
I see. And when will that close? Do you have any idea? Or
After I'm done my due diligence. Yes. So we are analyzing, and this is a
So
big...
there's a chance you won't do this at all?
Yes,
Yes. If
yes.
I would say the garages for our concept and the existing building lays out beautifully for 4 units per floor. There's a beautiful old staircase that we're going to totally restore. I mean, actually restore. And that center hall would allow for 4 units, 2 on the front on each wing and 2 on the back on each wing, and then 3 floors.
And then the outside of the building is just restoration and repair? Is that
Yes.
the plan?
I mean, the idea is we've already met with one of our, I use Pella Windows a lot. I don't mean to plug them, but they have been out to the site and they can match those windows and the muttons and the width perfectly. And we would replace the windows with insulated glass so that the next 100 years, it's not a heating nightmare. Okay.
All about that.
You mean like sash inserts into the existing frame? You're talking like sash inserts into the existing
No,
frame?
well, we don't know what we're going to find when we start taking the windows apart. We suspect we might have to replace, because the stonework, if you look at the outside of the house, there is...
It's flush against the frames.
There's stone around all the windows. The stonework has been painted, okay? There's anywhere from what we figure is 12 to 15 coats of paint on the stucco. What we plan to do is remove all the paint, repair all the Spalding stucco. There's a lot of areas, if you walk around the house, it really has deteriorated. So it needs to be thoroughly repaired, waterproof, and then a new coat color applied. We're hoping we'll be able to actually put not a paint, but a stucco finish on the stone after the proper preparation. So when we're done, you're going to have stonework around the windows, all repointed, not painted stone. and stucco. So the intent is really to bring it back and then match, the garage would match that stucco perfectly. So I guess you could tell I'm a little excited. I'm enthusiastic about the prospect of doing this. But to answer your question, Mr. Nagel, the amenity, the garages, to be able to provide 2 parking spaces under cover and to allow the privacy and the protection and security where somebody can come in, close the door behind them, get out of their car, and be in the building, not have to walk back outside in the rain and the weather and everything, is very important to us.
It sounds like you're hearing some opinions that there's issues about the scale of the project. Do one-car garages work?
No.
No.
No,
From your
for
perspective,
this
though.
level of, and the size of the units, because we're taking 25 units and reducing it down to 12. So we have to find 12 home buyers. And by the way, our architect has looked at how many units we could get, and we really can't, the building doesn't, I'll let Tim address this, but it really only works for 12 units. It doesn't work for more than 12. And it really doesn't work the way the building, because it was added to, these wings were added. There's solid 22 inches of masonry between the wings. It's very difficult to go front to back with the unit. So we've really analyzed this, but it's very important to provide the amenities of the garages for the new homeowners, and it does comply. It meets the site, and there was an existing structure in that very location when the house was originally built. So I would argue that we're not asking for anything that didn't exist when the original house was built.
Well, I think everyone should understand the most important, the salient issue here, and this is adaptive reuse. I mean, really, it's been adaptive reuse for the past 100 years, and you're going through another stage. So what you're really looking at is, how do you make this work? Instead of vehemence all over the place and harangue and everything, how do you make this work? It's very simple. If zoning allows them to do whatever they can on this property, then they have by right to do this.
I mean, I think that, I know you said that we shouldn't talk about this, but I think that if one of the concerns is retaining open space, I think it's important to see what the landscape is so that if it gives the effect of open space too. I mean, I know that we only should comment on the building, but if you're asking for advice, I think that's important.
And that's an option
What?
someone could put forth.
I mean, it's the site, you know.
Well, I don't think you can really get into gardens and.
No.
That has nothing to do with.
That's not what I mean.
I know, but scale is
but-
built form and
Right,
open
Right,
space.
but the thing is, you know, with a garage, I mean, it's basically all asphalt. I would think, it looks to me like you pull into each garage on a driveway off of the street.
No, but we can't get into that. So,
But see, that changes the whole thing, because, you know, if you're talking about open space and views and what neighbors see from their houses and so forth, if there's absolutely no landscape, then they're going to see a huge garage with doors lined up. If you have more landscaping, it softens it. And so that's why
well, they
I'm
do have the
bringing it up.
buffers. They have a tree buffer all the way around. But again, I go back to the massing
I
and
was
the
going
open
to say,
space.
if there's any way to, I know there's, to make four-car garages, I guess we're talking, so if there's any way to separate the long one.
Oh, yeah.
Completely blocking all the view sheds from below and looking up, if there's any way to make 3 groupings of garages, I just feel
Like if you take that centerpiece, and this has been just looking at your original design, my personal thing is if you look at that the center 2 doors, if you make that width more prominent as I forget your name, sir, the architect? Tim, as you were recommending originally, and if you change the type of doors, at least you wouldn't have a row of, what is that, 2, 4, 6 on one side. You'd have still 6 doors, but it'd look 2, and then a prominent piece in the middle. It's that magic number of you could put 3 garage doors in a row, and if it's okay. You go to 4, and it looks like a parking lot. And so breaking it up that way wouldn't add really any cost per se, or much cost at all.
We can take that
Break
into
up that monotony.
consideration.
Huh?
We can take that into consideration. The other thing, too, which the elevation does not really depict, is that these center garages, these 2 bays, actually step out slightly from the rest of the building, so that you'll also get a break in your roof line. So it's not a single flat elevation down the length of the garage.
Getting back to the, I guess, the shape of the garage, which seems to be an area of concern, and I was just speaking to Kaz about it, we would certainly be willing to at least entertain the thought, if the board thought it would be more appropriate, to try and mirror this garage like the greenhouse. Produce, a roof that would look more like that which was existing back when the building was built. This was done for the purpose of lowering the view shed, to the impact on the views from neighboring properties. Certainly, back to the original picture, you can see it's a more imposing building, the greenhouse, than what we're showing. It certainly has a look, and to the extent that this board thinks that look is a more appropriate look, a more consistent look, something that might lend itself more to being an outbuilding rather than just one gigantic building, we could absolutely come back with a rendering of a garage that would mirror something like that. Obviously, we couldn't have glass roofs, but we could have a material that would mimic that look. We are really here for comment and to come back with something that we think will work for both of us. Again, the concern here is that we've got to provide this covered parking. And to get that across the finish line, we are certainly willing to work with the board and with the neighbors to produce something, again, that's consistent with what's there or what was there. And if that means going back to the original building and taking that greenhouse concept, we can work with that, if you think that's something that we should consider.
Well, how would that affect the footprint scale of this? Would that reduce it?
I don't think it would reduce the size. It would reduce, it would change the look, because we still need our parking spaces underneath that roof.
Well, I mean, I think, from my perspective, the look, I mean, you're matching the existing house. I mean, you probably couldn't do better than that.
Right.
As far as keeping the historical aspects of this property, but, I think the scale is a bit troubling. You're almost doubling the footprint of that structure. Understanding it's separate, but from all appearances from the street, it looks like it's all one piece.
Sure.
And I don't know the answer, but maybe something to think about, if there's some way you could reduce that enlarged footprint somehow.
Right.
To me, when I drive down that road, what's really imposing is the existing building. The center building plus the 2 wings. It's huge. So, I mean, why are we going into this whole thing about scale of this new piece, which I'm not saying it's the one we go with. I'm saying it needs to be played around with. But when you compare that to the rest of the building, you get this huge building that's imposed upon that small street. I mean, look everything in relationship here. We're acting as if the only big building there is this.
Yeah, I mean,
Making a mountain out of a molehill is what I'm saying.
Yeah, we've certainly seen a lot worse. We've had a property where they probably quadrupled the footprint. Right. But that's, it wasn't a good thing.
What architects do is listen to problems, issues that people have, and then do something to make them go away and make something work.
If anything,
That's what architecture is all about.
the new garage is more scale appropriate to the surrounding neighbors than is the main house. Because
Well,
you're
I don't-
absolutely right.
I think you're right about, if you look at the individual two-bay component, and the finishes are very in keeping, but I think it keeps harping with me that if there's any way that that could be cut in half and moved, it's a long arm suddenly attached to a body, and it changes the feel. I know it sounds so soft saying that, but is there any way to still accommodate the parking you need? And I like your finishes and scale within itself. You can't break that into, or even stagger, any way to make it less solid, I guess, and blocking.
But we are pretty much right on the setback lines.
You are.
So there's not a lot of room to move this building around, either away from the main house or shifting it north or south. And in fact, we've stepped out the center section of the building as much as we possibly can, which will give a break in the roof line and will give a break in the facade itself.
I'm wondering, you know, if we agree that the garage can, if we agree on the concept of the garage, which we're not saying we do or not, but I'm wondering if it can somehow be made to look more like individual sections rather than, I think our objection is that it's just one big mass. And if there were some way, I have two objections. One is that it's one big mass. So if it could be designed in a way that it minimized the massing through a design technique, you know, rather than maybe, you know, maybe some of the sections are higher and some are lower or whatever, but just so that in terms of massing, the scale is more in keeping with what's around it. I mean, really the thing that bothers me the most about it is, I guess everyone has said this, is the long, sort of unbroken size and shape of this.
How about, and again, this is just throwing out ideas, if we combined this greenhouse concept with what's there, so you take maybe the two middle the garages and show maybe a raised roof that might reflect more the greenhouse, and then you have a break in your visual, and you have maybe a look that's more consistent with what was there while still accommodating the garages.
Well, you know, to me, the greenhouse is interesting in that it was there originally, but I don't think that the point is really to recreate the greenhouse. I think what's more interesting or more important is the massing, is the scale. So I think it would look a little funny, personally, if it were a greenhouse.
But I think I know what he's saying.
But I know, I do think that, you know, having some kind of, something to break it up would, or maybe different roof lines or different, you know what I'm saying? If you look at basically at a large carriage house, for example, often it's not just one big block, but they have a center block like you've tried to create, and then the two wings. And if there was some way to emphasize that more, or something, just to break it up more, because right now it's sort of like looking at a big box with doors.
We can take that under consideration.
You know, I think, and again, I think that's something that the architect would need to come up with, not us, really. I mean, we're here to react to what you're doing and to try and suggest what you're doing, but without seeing an elevation with the garage right next to it, it's hard for us to talk about, even to talk about scale and massing and so forth. I really think we need an elevation with the building and then with the garages next to it so that we can compare and we can really see what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, can you do that like photographically, just to, so you're not having to redraw the whole mansion? I mean, just some way of.
Yeah, we can draw,
You know what I mean?
we can show you the elevation of the garage next to a full elevation of the building.
I think that's what we're
I
asking
think that
for.
would be
I mean,
very
I think
good.
that would be really
And really
helpful.
from all angles.
Because
Three sides.
Yeah, because the thing is too, you know, when you're talking about the garage and you're talking about the windows and so forth, it would be helpful for us to see where the windows not only line up on the east side, but on the south side and on the north side, because those are really those three facades are the facades that everyone will see. It's not a two-dimensional project, So I just think it's important to see it with respect to the mansion itself.
Okay.
Do you want to see an alternative to roofline? Is there something you want us to try? Do you want us to just come back with this garage with just more elevations with the whole building?
I think we're asking for options, alternatives, with
Okay.
roof lines, with staggering, with, scale change, whatever you guys could come up with.
Sure. We can try that.
Mhm.
We can come up with
Agreed.
some ideas.
And the other thing, too, is it would be helpful for us if we get these drawings beforehand so that we can really go to the site before the next meeting, so we can really go to the site and look at it and, see what's going on.
We'll get started on it right away.
And the key to this development going forward to you see no other way to do this other than providing enclosed parking as far as the client goes.
How about, can you have the driveway somehow go, if it's not completely underground, partially underground, some of the units so it's not as visible?
Well, what's interesting is that what you're objecting to is the long linear look of the building.
Right.
The lower I make the building, the more linear it's going to look.
Well, maybe you don't do all of them that way, or, I don't know, but I'm
Well,
just,
We're still also, we need to provide comfortable access from the garage to the building.
yeah.
So we can't really vary the heights of the garages,
There's-
the floors at least.
There's no way of, I'm just throwing ideas, but historically speaking, porte cocheres are very big in mansions. Is there any porte cochere solution?
As
Just
opposed
throw it
to
out
an,
there.
as opposed to an enclosed garage?
Well, it's semi-enclosed, I guess. It's not totally. You're
How
right.
about for the guests as they drive up to the building?
I just
No,
think of historical.
I'm only kidding, because I know it is not our intention to alter the
character. I
main
guess that's
structure
what
at
I'm-
all. So that was just, but we can't, what's interesting is, we've done two other projects. We totally restored and created a new use for Steeple View, which is the Lucky Duck, now Bang & Olufsen and Saxby's. And we have 10 homeowners, and we did carports. They were open air, and there's one parking space per unit. And as much as they appreciate that, everybody has asked. In fact, we have one customer who actually bought in the new building because they wanted the two-car garage. So we're here based on what we do and what we know will work for our ability to economically have the wherewithal to restore this building. And this amenity, the garage amenity, the two-car garage amenity, and our garages are all block inside. It's not drywall. If you go to a Luella, it's all solid block inside, and these will be individual block garages for each homeowner, so it's totally private, and they feel safe and secure. So that, for us to go ahead with this project, this is a key component. This is not something that we can possibly do or not do. For us to do this project, we need to provide the two-car garages for each homeowner. So I think I
That's
should
the
make that
question I
clear.
asked. That's what I
Yeah.
was asking.
Yes.
And for it to be viable for you all, that's what you have to do.
Yes, yes, yes. And I think, and the only thing I would offer is, if it's not us, I don't know what other use for this building, unless it goes back to a hotel maybe, I don't know, or, and then you got whole different issues with parking and everything. So this is, what's nice about our concept is you're going to have, instead of one homeowner and an apartment, you're going to have 12 homeowners, and you're going to have the pride of ownership for all 12, and that's going to sustain itself. I mean, there's a lot of talk about sustainability right now, and that's what our concept is that you have home ownership and the Condo Homeowners Association maintaining not only the building and the garage, but the grounds. And it really, this will enable the building to have a new life for another 150 years, or at least 100. So.
You know, I know we're not, I'm just really, if when you come back and present to us, it would be really helpful to me if, we won't discuss this, but this is the site. The site is so important to the building, I think, to know what's going, you know, if it's, what's going to happen at the end of the site, because that really will show how the
Well, there's an existing pine tree. If you look at our site plan, actually, I'd like to show this, but if we could have the clear one too, Dave, please. You see the pine tree right here? That pine tree will remain. And we didn't show it on the plan purposely because we wanted to show the side elevation without that tree in front of it. You know, just so that everybody, for purposes of tonight, you could really discuss the building. But we're saving, we had Steve Schreiner out today. He was assessing every tree on the site for us. The beech tree, 2 beautiful magnolias. I want to make sure that we can protect them and save them. So
Yeah, we can't move it. Well, all right.
that is a big concern of ours, and that's why we showed our street plan, the trees lining, because we know that streetscape is so important, both for the Shade Tree Commission as well as the residents. But also, you asked about the material. It's not going to be macadam. It's actually going to be pavers, E.P. Henry Eco pavers, which are eco-friendly for drainage. We're not going to allow any stormwater to run off the site. We're going to not only collect the new building, but we're also going to collect the existing building, because in talking to some of the neighbors, we found that there have been stormwater issues. So I know that's not a...
Yeah, we can't.
Yeah. So...
Do you have anything else to add with the renovations of the main house, or any other comments on that at this time?
Well, the whole idea is to maintain the existing look and the historical accuracy of the facade of the exterior of the building. The interior has been so cobbled up that it's virtually starting over, but maintaining all the windows, maintaining and repairing the stucco, maintaining the detailing of the architectural woodwork around the cornice work and the friezes and things. So all of this is going to be, it's going to look like a new old building when we're finished with it.
So it's period in time where it ended up where it is today. We're going to stay there. We're
Yes.
not going back to...
I used to subscribe to the old House Journal, and they would call it the muddling of the month on the last
Not doing
cover.
that.
No, we're not doing that.
Right.
I think when you come back, if you could have somewhat more of an idea of what the roof material would be if you replace it or if you repair it, because I think that that's a really important aspect of the old building. It's very visual, obviously.
Yes, it's true of all Mansard roofs. I think what we could actually do is provide you with a sample of the material that we would be proposing.
I've got kind of a short list of things we'd like to see if you'd want to listen. I think we talked about this earlier. In terms of the restoration, we'd like to see a scope of work that's a detailed, written out, this is what we are going to be doing, but also a definition of what restoration is to you, which is what we just talked about. We're restoring what we see today, not going back to 1890 or whatever. This is what we're going to restore, this piece right here. Also, I think we're going to have to bring these plans up to another level where we see where the stairs are that go down to the basement. We see that connection in the plan view, which also shows how that roof line is going to, affect or be around the trash area, those kinds of things. So, and the elevations will then also, show that scale. And I think and then the options we talked about. We'd like to see roof options, massing options, and anything else that would help us understand how that site's going to work once you have this in place.
And those
maybe
options-
landscaping, maybe whatever, but I'm more interested in massing.
And those options aren't limited to just what we've discussed today, anything else?
I understand.
I don't know if you guys are complete with what you have to present. We'd like to get into some public comment, I think, if that's...
Great.
You have anything else?
That's it. Thank you for your time.
Okay. One thing I'd like to
Thanks.
preface on the public comment is that we're going to try to keep this as short as we can. I know somebody wanted to do some kind of a presentation, a PowerPoint, which I was told we're not allowed to do unless it's on the agenda as a PowerPoint from somebody. So if you want to speak about something, we're allowed to do that. If you want to do it next time, we just have to put you on the agenda. Does that follow? And then it only and everything else has to just pertain to historical comments and concerns. No stormwater management, no, nothing else. That's another venue. Okay.
I'm Susan Byrne from Luella Court. We've talked before. I'm the person with the PowerPoint. I have a couple issues, and I'd like to go back and have that reconsidered, actually, because I was told in an email this afternoon that this presentation was not going to occur because the application was not complete. I'd be happy to send that to anyone who'd like to see it, but because of that, I did not bring with me a lot of the supporting documentation that I needed. So I do have the PowerPoint, and if the rules, somehow the rules got confused, and if they got confused on one side, we spoke about this before, this will be conducted as a gentleman to a gentle neighborhood, but it will be fair. It has to be fair. So if he got to present when we were told he wasn't going to be there, we almost didn't have people show tonight. I was going to call everyone and tell them not to come because the email, which again I'd be happy to show you, says that it's not going to be discussed tonight at all.
And that email, you probably shouldn't have gotten in the first place. And this was published, that we were having this meeting. So I don't care what kind of emails you got. This was a public meeting today, and should have responded to the Township's website on meetings. So rumors, hey, if you want to abide by them, it's your option. But this meeting was being held today, as stated previously.
Okay. Well, I was not, there is no thing published anywhere. Well, I've seen the application, so I kind of didn't think it was pretty complete anyway. But I don't see anywhere in the description of the Harb things that a PowerPoint can't be done. It's very short and sweet. It will actually answer some of the questions that you wanted to have illustrated to you tonight. So if you can allow me to do that,
It's kind of not up to me. It's up to... If we're not publishing it, I'm not sure we're allowed to do that. That's my problem.
It's very illustrative of some of the questions that you have, and it would actually make give you some answers to some of those questions. It's very short and sweet, honestly.
If it's acceptable with you, we'll have to see it.
Put it on the agenda.
If it'll be helpful,
Yeah.
we'll do it now or next time.
No, put it on the agenda for the next time, because you'll be taking up too much for everyone else.
No, everyone else is interested in seeing it. In fact, it's educational for them. Yes.
Because I think part of, I don't know what they're going,
Is it 10 minutes? Something
No,
like that?
not even. It's 10
Okay.
slides. It's all pictures, real
All right.
fast.
Is it ready to go, or?
Yes. And if not, it's in my purse.
So we want to take a break? Okay, we'll have a 10-minute break,
Okay,
and then
I have a couple questions in the meantime, unless you want a break. Okay.
keep going.
As I read the Harb ordinances, and I was very heavily involved in getting our neighborhood protected, which started back in 2003 or 4, I believe, with the advent of the Bank of America building. The Harb ordinances do, as I read them, and I don't know that it's debatable reading, it does talk very seriously about context of the neighborhood and scale. That's the purpose. It should fit into the neighborhood, and the scale should be appropriate for that. Now, when you compare the original mansion, which was much more, not quite as wide as it is today, to the current mansion, the greenhouse kind of goes out the window. And I have a picture in my presentation that I don't think includes the greenhouse originally. So I have an old picture from the Radnor Historical Association, which you'll see when I go to show it. But the expressed purpose of the Harb, at least part of it, is to protect the context of the neighborhood and the scale of the neighborhood, and that whether it's the center, ours is very typical, as you referred to this, so I'm going back to it, very typical of early railroad development with the center estate building in the middle, a yard surrounding it, a cartway surrounding that, and then infill cottages, which the mansion was 1866, and the infill cottages were the 1919s and 1920s, and they were done every other one. So if that helps, I hope it did. But underneath this whole thing is the provisions of the comprehensive plan. And the provisions of the comprehensive plan talk very strongly about neighborhood preservation, diversity of housing. I think this project has some issues with diversity of housing and neighborhood preservation. It also talks very seriously about open space. So this is an interesting neighborhood in many, many ways, but it's a particularly interesting neighborhood with this project because it has all of those things in it together. And if you take, going back to this drawing, if you take this property and add that much to it, you end up with about, I walked it off today, so it would only be an estimate, but there's almost no yard left. Originally, the greenhouses were here. And I've seen this in discussions before. Greenhouses are clear glass. They're not solid wall. They have a completely different look and feel. It's like the difference between a square or a rectangular building or a steeple. It's very, very different. So I think that is kind of an interesting concept as well. The word you were looking for earlier was fretwork, the opening on the top. Yeah, that's fretwork. Yeah, so, and the finishes are only part of what they're charged with. They're charged with looking at the district, which is why we don't have ordinances in Radnor that only deal with individual sites yet. We have them that deal with districts. And the 3 districts are defined differently, and the 3 different districts are probably administered by you differently, I would assume. So those are my points right now. I can come back when the PowerPoint is ready? Okay, great.
Okay. Thank you, Susan.
Oh, up. That's the drawing. It's courtesy of Greg. Oh.
Yeah, it's on ours. There it is.
Okay,
No, we
there you
have
go.
Okay.
Some of this presentation gives context to the people that I hope are watching on television. This is a drawing from the Radnor Historical Association of the original mansion. You can see the spire for the Presbyterian Church and the Opera House before the fire occurred and took off the mansard there. The woman playing croquet in the forefront is probably standing someplace near my kitchen sink right now. So you can see the railroad behind the old trees. Most of them still exist. And it's a nice example of how wide open the town was before it got, before time passed. It's a different town now, obviously, but some people enjoying the nice yard at the mansion. Well, that tradition continues today with our neighborhood and with our annual block party, which we have, and we have a wonderful, eclectic group of people, and we take great advantage of that yard. You can see in the forefront the flag that we had made when the Bank of America building first started our whole foray into community works in 2004. But we we have a great time. We all bring our best meals, and some of us stay up way too late to enjoy our neighbors. This is the context of Luella Court in the Wayne Overlay Business District. We are the yellow line that dips down at the top by the railroad station. As you can see, we're an oasis of green in an asphalt town. We're bound by the West Presbyterian Church parking lot, the train parking lot, the shops in the front, and what we consider to have been a really ill-conceived project of the municipal yard to our east. We're a small pocket of green among a lot of asphalt. So consequently, the mansion and its open space serves the entire community because business people from the business district walk by at lunchtime, and some of them sit out and have a nice, a break in the middle of the day. It really does serve the community in many different ways, not just my home. There's the old girl herself. We know her intimately. We think she has wonderful bones, and she's still very strong. Now, she does need maybe a little tuck here and there, but generally speaking, she's a tank. The windows that you can see to the left of the picture on the first floor tuck up into the walls so that when the porch was there, you can walk out those windows to the porches. So there are architectural details here that are just amazing. And we know as a neighborhood that it's going to change is coming down the road. We'd like it to be done by somebody who has extensive preservation knowledge, because we think it's going to get difficult, and we don't want to see you get into a place where you're not going to want to do it, or it's going to be well beyond financial reason. But that's our mansion, and we think it's really a centerpiece of the town and an asset to the whole township. So that's our neighborhood zoomed in. As you can see, the mansion takes up roughly half of the 1.3 acre of ground, and then the 20 cottages or homes around the mansion. We worked very hard in 2004 to get historical designation. We also had our GIS lines snapped so we weren't mixed commercial and residential. And we also had the zoning change from R5 to R4 to prohibit massive townhouse development here. We know it's a great location. That's why we live there. This is another example of one of the parties we had in another year. This plan will take down roughly 9 trees, Cass? 9, 10 trees.
Is this tree in the picture the one that's staying?
No.
No?
That's going. So's the dogwood, so's the mulberry. The one behind the tent is staying. And that probably has some issues as well because there's a big branch that's been twisted off for a while. So those trees and that coverage that they provide, that absorption that they provide, that green that they provide, the beauty, that's going, if the plan goes through. So now let's talk about view sheds. I think these next several slides are pretty powerful. This is the outbuilding garage that is included in our historic designation packet as being an outbuilding to the mansion. This is the view from roughly Cowan's Flowers, or that center island, up toward the yard itself. So this is what this looks like today. If this plan goes through and these garages are added, that's what it's going to look like tomorrow. Those are, that's as close as I could get to what you described, Cass, and they're from 102 Luella.
You know this too well.
So from the street, it will appear to be immediately abutting the building. And as you can see, it will extend well past the picture. Different architecturally, but a very similar look, I believe. It looks to me, and I mean this as nicely as I can say it, if you took the doors and made them a different material, I could be looking at a self-storage facility. Okay, this is the view shed south. looking at St. Mary's Church across the current parking lot and yards. All the trees in that picture, except for the pine, will go. And then, of course, the garages need driveways that'll be roughly 30 by 20. So this is what the view shed looks like today. If the project goes through, this is what the view shed will look like tomorrow. This is the view shed looking east on the north side of the circle. You can see it has a nice open feel for a very narrow street that, again, the driveways would provide a problem in the future for us as well, but we won't go into that because that's not driveway stuff. That's not historic stuff, but logistically that's going to be tough. This is the view shed today. If the project goes through, that's the view shed tomorrow. Okay? So what this discussion for us is really about is not a plan or whether it's a greenhouse roof or it's not a builder's plan, it's a neighborhood preservation plan. We've worked very hard to get to this point. Luella Court and Luella Mansion offer diverse housing. We are a neighborhood of all ages, all socioeconomic levels, all backgrounds, all everything. We're very low maintenance, and we'd like to see that maintained. This garage will change that significantly. When I spoke with Cass he came to my house one day to talk about the project, and we were talking about the other construction projects he's had in town, and it seems to me that of the major condominium developments lately, there are 3 different housing or garage solutions that have been chosen for those, whether it's Wicklow, 102 Luella, or Steepleview. So I said to Cass, how come you're choosing this parking solution at this point and you didn't choose it with the other 2? And that's because, if I'm correct, I don't want to quote you inaccurately, but you said that when you bought those properties, you already bought those pre-existing conditions, and so that's why you went that way. I keep saying there has to be another solution to this. The parking garage is an issue. The mansion, I'm looking forward to seeing the details that you've asked for the mansion, because it can be done beautifully, or it can be like a bad facelift when it's finished, But really, to us, this is about preserving a neighborhood and affordable housing, and not looking at a wall of 6 double-car garages every time I look out my front porch. So that's the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is George Strimmel. I'm a citizen, a voter, and a resident of Luella Court. I've happily been so for well over a decade. It's a very special place, and I think you got that from what Susan just told you. More importantly, let's look at something that really bothers me as a professional broadcaster, and that's the shot clock. If I remember right, reading this, and tell me if I'm wrong, we're in a 45-day shot clock, and we're acting like it's a 450-day shot clock. I think that once this was submitted, you have 45 days to make up your mind, and if you don't, it's accepted. Am I wrong on that?
We understand the rules, thank you.
What's that?
We understand the rules.
Yeah. Well, I don't know when when is your next meeting?
1 month from today.
Yeah, well and this starts upon submission. You're about 15 days into submission. Do you have time for the next one? Are you assured of that?
I'm sure we do, yes.
You're absolutely sure?
Absolutely.
So the next time, you're going to make the decision or not, or if you don't make a decision, the decision's made. Am I correct? I deal with time. Time is my business. And I just want to make sure that time doesn't creep up with us. We don't have endless time here. We talk about renovations, we talk about changing things, and you look for further decisions. Do we have the time? And if we don't, this becomes a fait accompli. Let me go back to what's appropriate and what isn't appropriate. We've talked about the hotels in town, If I remember right, the hotels in town, like the Wayne Hotel, Radnor Hotel, don't have covered parking. You don't necessarily need that. I understand from a financial viewpoint, I want to understand totally why these decisions are being made. Well, understand what's being made from mine. I'm looking out for the best of the community and the best of my community. I, too, have a dog in this fight, and I want to make sure that everyone, if we can come out with a win-win, I'm all for it. Maybe what we're really having problem is an inappropriate building. That's really what the problem is. We've seen sketches of what the building used to look like, what the main mansion used to look like. It's been changed a great deal. We didn't see those pictures, but maybe a little shot of them. And it isn't what it was originally. Those, at least as far as I've been understand, the greenhouses weren't there. They were built in the 1870s by a company called Lord & Burnham, as a matter of fact. But under any circumstances, they did give a certain scale, look, and that's why people build curtain walls and things like that in architecture. It is a light possibility. There's also the possibility of no garages at all and simply a more sensitive parking solution, which is what most of us on the Luella Court live with. Very few, even the people that have garages, I don't know that they use them. So I understand what the problem is. All I do is come forth with a caveat that we don't want to end up that no decision becomes the decision. And so I know it's a month from now. It could be faster if you so choose. Am I correct? You can have special meetings. Most committees can. And move rapidly so that the decisions are filtered through your input. And we, all of us who live on the court, would appreciate that because it's a very special place that we want to keep special. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Caroline Gagliardi, Midland Avenue 207. I just wanted to express again that I feel like the drawings are very misleading, and that I think that they should have been much more detailed. They should have had the whole building, the whole of Luella, and the proposed new garages attached. And I think it would have been much easier for everybody to see the scale of the whole project as opposed to seeing them in small pieces. The original greenhouse that this gentleman was referring to, and the picture he was showing, that it was part of the original building. Well, as my other gentleman friend said, where this greenhouse is right now, it actually has been added on to already, so these garages are not going to go where that greenhouse is. I just wanted to reiterate that. And it's very misleading and it's very misleading to look at the drawings because of the new proposed buildings, because the trees where they're positioned are actually, covering the roof line. So that's another point I'd like to make. I'd like to see those garages without the trees in front of them so we could see the roof line. Again, I have major stormwater problems on Midland Avenue, and I am very concerned about the proposal of this large building. And we were, we were told that other projects around town would alleviate that problem, and it's actually gotten worse for us, even since the middle school has gotten in. So it hasn't helped us. So any kind of proposed buildings, as we have here, are going to make our situation worse. The trade-off I feel of living downtown, there are trade-offs, and I think if you're lucky enough to live downtown like we do, and live in such a special place like Wayne, there are trade-offs. And in this case, the trade-off is you're not going to have your two-car garage. A lot of us have garages, but we are not in a position to use them for our cars every day. We just use them for storage because they're older houses and there's not a lot of storage, and I can't use my basement because of water problems. So we use our garages. And so if you want the privilege of living downtown, there are trade-offs, and that is one of the trade-offs that we are prepared to do in this, when you live downtown. And I appreciate that Mr. Callaway has an interest in restoring the building, but and I know he's concerned about the potential buyers, but these garages are going to be put in at the expense of the existing homeowners. Their visual, it's going to visually impact their daily lives, and I just think that's it's going to be really sad, and I just really hope that it does not go through. I think there has to be another option. That green space is extremely precious. There's very little of it in town, and obviously, as you've seen from Susan's slides, it's a huge part of that neighborhood, and I think that really has to be kept. I also was concerned about there was a mention of the windows that would be replacing the existing windows, and I would hope that they, if there are sash windows in there right now, that the reproductions would also be sash. I'm sure Pella can make whatever windows that you need, and I think they should be historically reproduced to keep the integrity of the original building. Thank you.
Thank you. A few of the items that you mentioned that we did request them to supply next time. So the scope of work, which talks about the restoration, there'll be a detailed description of what they're doing. So there'll be specifications on those kinds of things. And then, what was the other thing? Yeah, the elevations and the connections to the building. We're asking for that as well. So. I guess they could do it without the trees, but I think your view is actually going to be with the trees. So I think that's a more realistic view.
I'm Kathy Harris. I live on the east side of the Llewellyn Court. I'm concerned about the roof of the garages being...
Ma'am, can you speak into the
I'm
microphone?
sorry. I'm concerned about the roof of the garages being blacktop. In the summer, that's going to reflect a lot of heat up towards our houses, and it's going to be ugly. We're going to be looking at our second floor windows at a blacktop garage, a blacktop roof, and it's not acceptable. Also, I worked with Beverly and Susan on the historic thing also, and the Llewellyn Court district was a gestalt. It's the whole thing. It's not just the house, Llewellyn House. It's the building, the grounds, and the surrounding cottages. And that's how the ordinance was written. And I think the garages destroys a third of that. I forgot what else I was going to say. I just think that, I agree with the previous speaker that if you want to live downtown, I think the people buying the condos would rather see green than a blacktop garage roof also. The green is very important, and I think that there's other solutions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, my name is Susan Bowers, and I live in the Luella Mansion. I love old buildings. I'm a preservationist, and if you really, in my opinion, if you really want to keep the mansion looking the way it originally did, it would be very difficult to do if you took out the windows and if you destroyed the interior of the house. Although the building, you should go into the building, I think, and look at the woodwork in the buildings. I'd be glad to show you my apartment. The woodworking inside each of those apartments is still beautiful. And I'm wondering, Cass, would you keep the height of the ceilings the same in the building? Because that is another beautiful...
Ma'am, that's not consideration of this meeting.
Well,
your interiors.
Well, isn't the historic?
No.
So this is not really.
This is exterior.
Just exterior.
I love hearing about the details of the interior, but we're really only given the.
It's just the exterior. Yeah. Okay. Well, then I hope that you will bring a sample of what the exterior of the windows that you're going to replace them with would look like. because I think it's going to be hard to duplicate them. And maybe there are preservationist architects in this area that might be willing to even donate their time to looking at this building, which I don't think anybody has explored. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hello.
Hi.
My name's Cynthia Munger, and I'm kind of the newcomer to the neighborhood. My neighbors have been here forever, and when I came here about 4 years ago, I looked at all the condominiums and the places that were scattered around Wayne, and coming from Chicago and Boston and other areas. When I came upon this little alcove, and it's hard to explain, but I think it's very important for you to understand it. It was different. It had an ambiance that you can't replicate, and you certainly can't call it historical with garages. And I came from a 3-car garage. I thought I was going to die. But when we reference that if you're going to be in a protected historical location, you don't have big garage doors. Now, I appreciate the efforts to make them look historical, but garages aren't historical. It's a conflict, and you're here to protect the hard work that my neighbors made, that I wasn't here, but when I came into the neighborhood, I learned what it meant. My dog breaks out, and when my dog hears Allison's kids, he runs into her house and sits on her couch. I sit on my second floor porch, and Barb walks by, and we talk for 25 minutes, and she's standing on the street. We shovel each other's snow. We go to the open space. We walk up and down the middle of the street, and we know every car that's there. If I yelled out of my house, help, there'd be 10 people there. You talk about historical, that's what it is. That's the community that was a historical family community. And you're here, your job is to protect us. You granted my neighbors, when they fought for it, the right to preserve it. And why are we talking about garages? They weren't and aren't and never will be historical. Having said that, there may be creative ways. We built houses in a company in Chicago. We ran into problems like this. And we do understand that that building is getting old. There has to be a better way. But in the interest of what is your charter, on behalf of all the efforts that were made, no matter how many different roofs or type of materials, you got big, ugly, red garage doors. And you can make them as fancy as you want. There's still 2-car garages in a historical community who understands they didn't fit and agreed as a community to live without them. So I implore you to stop this and to appreciate the time frame, and then let us explore it the right way, the timely way. How many of you have been out and talked to me up on my porch? How many of you seen my dog sit out there? How many kids have you seen run across the street to throw a ball? You put 12 garages, 2-car garages there, you add 25 cars to a narrow street like we have, it's not going to work. Those kids can't run up and down that street. I'm not going to be able to take my dog off the leash in case he sees Allison's kids. He's going to get hit by something. There's no room. We're a little narrow street surrounding a big, beautiful building with 100-year-old trees that hang over us. Your charter is to honor the agreement you made with us 3 or 4 years ago. Don't take our neighborhood away. Please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Nancy Fleming, and I live on Luella Court. I look from my front door, I look directly at the little garage that's there. And then I see the mansion every time I open my door. I walk out and I see that. Across the street, it's green. I do not see the cars. There's low bushes, and so I can see just a little bit of the tops of the cars. But I can see all of my neighbors' houses. What I'm going to look at, if this is approved, is basically storage units. And from my second floor window, I look down at the top of that four-cornered garage. But I see all this green, and I can see all the neighbors and all the trees. I can wave to my neighbors. And what I'm going to look down at are rooftops. So I beg all of you to get out of your cars, will come up, get out of your cars and walk this street. We are on the low side, on the side facing Lancaster. And if you see in this, we lost all of this. Before the Harb was there, we lost all of this. We lost all of this. So now what we have left of this area are all of these homes. And this space is precious. And to me, it is part of the historical nature of the street. The whole presentation seemed to be, what was the garage building just going to look like? You have to see how it's going to impact this wonderful, precious neighborhood. And to me, of all of the historical work that comes before this board, this is the birthplace of Wayne. I mean, only bits and pieces were discussed tonight. Drexel came and wanted to open a girls' school there, him and Childs. And Bryn Mawr decided that they were going to open it. And so he decided, that he would take that to Philadelphia, have it open for the girls during the day and for the men during the night. That was the founding of the Drexel. But that didn't stop the Drexel influence, but it all started with him wanting to build a school for girls here. And then it came to the fact that Childs saw how wonderful this area was. And the mansion sitting tall, up on the crest at the highest point of Wayne. And he then decided that we should have the hotels. And then the other hotel was built. And if you go back and you look at these wonderful passageways that go over to the train station and the whole development with the opera and the cultural events that took place. And Childs was very instrumental in the whole development of North Wayne. I mean, so here is the most historic building that we have left. And talking about the preservation, every ounce of detail that goes into every window, everything with this roof, you can do a restoration, and you can make it plastic looking. You can make a restoration where it brings it back to life. This is our birthplace for the whole town. It is our last remaining treasure. And to put, I'm going to be very, very honest with you. I believe that if I had $1 million to buy one of these condominiums, I'd much rather see this open ground with a portico that you see in so many of the old buildings in Wayne. And they have, the archways, and that you still have all of that openness. This would so alter it that, yes, sure, they have the little bit of convenience not to get wet, to go in, but what they're going to have lost, walking around this block. You can't just look at these renderings without walking on the street to see the whole impact. And when we started this whole thing with the historical, making sure that we could protect this mansion, protect this street, protect this tiny little area of green, you know, in here. Because of all of my neighbors in North and South Wayne who come and walk their dogs, you know, along here. It's going to be this design that was presented tonight is just going to alter all of that. And if you come and you walk this street and you look at that, it is going to look like storage units. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Barbara Farrell. I live at 19 Llewellyn Court. I have something that nobody else has in this neighborhood. I have had 4 generations live in our house. My grandmother, my father, I live there, and my children. Do you think when my grandmother bought that house, she was thinking that she was going to have storage? Remember when you said earlier about, is that tree going to stay? That's the tree that I look at, is right out our yard. We have the green grass. We probably have one of the neatest places because we look at that open space. And I'm sure my grandmother was not thinking of a garage 4 generations ago.
Thank you.
Hi, Baron Gemmer, South Wayne. I have a couple of brief procedural points I'd like to bring up. Per Mr. Strimmel's comment, yes, it is 45 days submission, so I don't know if you have a written extension yet, but your next meeting is not within 45 days of submission of the application.
It wasn't a complete application.
Which is my second point. The rumor that Mr. DeGina was referring to the fact that this was an agenda item, therefore that's why we're going ahead with it and couldn't do the PowerPoint, et cetera. The rumor, the supposed rumor email, was a rejection of the application by the Director of Community Development, Matt Bauman, who has the authority to do so under the ordinance. So what really should have happened is this agenda item shouldn't have been heard at all, as was talked about before. Right now it's been heard under the guise of being a valid application, all this being on the record, which is just not true. There is no valid application. This could have been heard.
Once the application gets stamped, whether or not it was stamped correctly, then it appears before this board, and that's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened. Now, was there a complete submission? No. And that's all in agreement. But once that gets stamped and was done, maybe, I think it came in at, 4 o'clock or something, right before the deadline, and it was just rubber stamped. And not really looked at, and that's why it's on the agenda today.
You're mixing apples and oranges.
No, I'm not.
First off, the application was submitted late. It was submitted 14 days prior to the meeting, not 15. And I've talked with Matt about that already. Secondly, the stamping is the receiving it. It wasn't, Matt reviews it later for completeness, which is why he eventually rejected it.
I would ask you to please get to your point. Let's talk about the historical aspects. That's why we're here. Okay?
No, let me ask you this, then. Are you telling me that there is no valid application, so the 45-day clock is not running?
I'm telling you that we have plenty of time to look at this again, whether you count it as a good submission or not.
I disagree. If you count it as a good submission, it'll be 49 days before you act upon it.
I don't think that's correct.
Well, let me give you the math here. February 16th is when it was submitted. Your next meeting is not till April 6th. That's 49 days.
What my initial point was that it was an incomplete application, so the 45-day period has not run. And I'm not going to get into whether we should have listened to you tonight or listened to them. I want to hear your opinion on the historic aspects of this project.
I understand that, but you have to hear the procedural defects in an application also. As a board, you listen to all that. You can't, it's all part and parcel of it. You have to hear complaints about wrongdoings in the process. So that's what I'm saying. If you can't have it both ways. Either it's not an application, so the clock isn't running, or it is, and you need to get a written extension, otherwise it'll be deemed approved before your next meeting.
I think you're jumping the gun a little bit, too, because we haven't made a final ruling on anything tonight.
That's my point. If you don't make a ruling tonight, you won't be able to make a ruling till your next meeting.
So I think you need to just relax a little bit on that point. Nothing's been said yet. We're listening to you. So you can talk about that as being, I understand what you're saying. Keep going. Keep going.
But you're implying by making a ruling, then you consider it a valid application. So that's what I'm saying. We keep going back and forth between the two.
That being the case, which are other points? we haven't ruled on anything yet, as Cam said.
I understand that. I'm just trying to bring up the points.
We understand the
of those
point.
procedural points.
We understand it thoroughly.
Just from a historic standpoint, and this has been brought up before, you asked, can they do anything besides garages? And the architect has said, no. You don't have to buy that. If you don't think that's appropriate, if you don't think the scale, which you have very right to, as a matter of fact, I'll read that part, preserving the overall relationship amongst the buildings within each district's development pattern, which is 178.7F2, if you don't think that's appropriate, it doesn't matter whether he can't do anything else or not. You reject it based upon that. You're not here to try and make it fit, as I heard earlier before. You're trying to see if it's appropriate. If it's not, so be it. It's not appropriate. And also, please don't buy into the fact that if it's not this, beware of what's going to come down the line, which you also heard before. Just take this on its merits, not in terms of the economics or not in terms of what will and won't work from a functional standpoint, but whether it's historically appropriate. Thank you.
Thanks, Barry.
Yeah.
First time I've ever done this. My name is Patrick Nolan. I live on West Avenue, about a quarter of a mile away, and my son and grandchildren and my daughter-in-law live on 27 Luella Court. This is a tough act to follow. Some of these presentations were quite moving. The thing that suddenly hits me in terms of Mr. Nagel's accent a moment ago with respect to what's going on right now is that he mentioned historical aspects. Let's discuss the historical aspects. If you wanted to keep the Luella Court setting as close to the historical aspects as possible, you would be totally obligated to keep it as close to natural, open, green, spacious, and visually absolutely appealing. That is if you want to be truly historical. The greenhouse I'm not going to bring up. But one of the things that occurs to me, especially with the two ladies that spoke, was, you come off Lancaster Avenue, and you all know what driving Lancaster Avenue is like, trying to get onto it, trying to get off it. It is just bedlam. And within 50 yards of that bedlam is serenity. If you live there, you experience it. You're talking about a place that people live in, and you're talking about their daily ways of life, and you've heard some very beautiful arguments to that effect. And in the effort to try to make space, which is rare anymore, one of the rare things about Wayne is it doesn't have a very high profile anywhere. Third floor maybe, and that's it. It's one of the beautiful things about it. It's what makes it the village that it is. So space should be a treasure. It should really historically be a treasure, because we're not just talking about history of the past. Excuse me. We're talking about history of tomorrow. We're talking about Luella Court, when my grandchildren, who is making a lot of noise back there, is going to be living there. And the question is, when you come in, the little stab at preserving open space is in that little space that now has a bench on it. And it's groomed. And it's been worked on over the last couple of years so that it's been made attractive. And the first thing you get when you walk in there is you get this sense of release. Somehow or other you get off Lancaster Avenue and you see this little bit of grass and you see this little openness and you feel you breathe better. And so you come up 50 yards and you see the building, and the building is set back off the road. And that's nice. Once I even considered living there. And then you decide to walk around that building if you follow the traffic. Well, to your left, for almost to your left for almost, I'd say, 200 degrees of the compass, there's nothing. There's nothing. And nothing, I would like to say to you, in this day and age, is something. Now, on the basis of that, you know, what happens on that court, it's a way of life. So we're talking about a way of life. I don't mean to demean what the gentlemen are offering because, you know, I'm totally for what they're planning with that building. My understanding at this meeting is almost all the objections are about the garages. All right? What goes on over there, for example, we've seen the block party and the parties that they have. People do walk their dogs. I love when I leave my home, I walk over there and I walk around that place. I don't even go into my son's home. I just walk there and walk home again because it's open there and I like the ambiance of that little stretch. For example, just to show you what other kinds of living go on in that open space, I grew up in the asphalt streets of South Philadelphia, and I played half-ball. When my sons gather, we play half-ball on that open green space. My grandsons will someday be playing handball or half-ball on that green space. I don't know what my granddaughter will be doing, but I know the dog uses that green space plentifully. And so, basically, it seems to me right now what you're doing here is you're arguing over, on the one hand, the convenience of tenants who are paying, obviously they're going to pay a lot of money for it and they should have optimum convenience, and the garages ordinarily spell out optimum convenience. So you're dealing with that convenience, and over and against that, with respect to the garage, you're dealing with not just the physical inconvenience that all of these people are going to be put through, not just in terms of access and exit, but the inconvenience of no longer living here with a sense of space in their own heads because of the sense of space that is provided to them where they live. Because there's not that much open space around here. You got open space there at the field, which is a great project. And open space was so precious there, and that grass was so precious there. They laid that sod and waited 2 years before they even opened that area. That is how rigorous they were in protecting green and grass and open space. And then you got that field off North Wayne Avenue. And that's it. But these people have open space right at their doorstep. And so this is a sacrifice of life that they're going to have to put up with in order to accommodate the garage convenience. And so you have to ask yourself, you're going to weigh something. On the one hand, you're going to weigh the convenience of people to exit their car and enter that building, measured against a way of life of the occupants that live there. Now, if I had scales, I have no problem deciding how that should be resolved. And so, as I see this, the gentlemen I'm sure they have fabulous plans for that house. But parking, they're going to have to go back to the drawing board for that and come up with something that does not have buildings. And those pictures that woman put up on that wall, that was 10,000 words. That was not just 1,000 words. And everybody here knows that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Got a question, Mr. Holloway. If the parking garage doesn't get built, is that linked to the restoration and rehab of that main building?
Would you repeat the question?
If the parking garage doesn't get built, is the restoration and rehab of the main building linked to that? In other words, one doesn't happen without the other?
The project won't move forward without the garage, so that includes the restoration of the building.
As I answered earlier, we are the equitable owner of the property. We're in the process of our due diligence. This is just one element of a myriad of things that we have to do with Phase 1 environmental inspections. We're doing a detailed analysis of the building, both structural survey of the building and a physical inspection of every unit in the building. So there's a number of issues that we have to address. But as I answered, I believe, Mr. Nagel's question earlier, if we can't do the garages, we will not move forward with the we can't, because we cannot market a building that does not provide that amenity for the homeowners that are going to live in the building. So as far as our involvement, neighbors, I don't know if that's what they would like to hear, but if we can't build the garages for whatever reason, we're not going to move ahead with the project. And the owner of the property does know that. That was something I was very clear on when we purchased. That was one of the reasons why the current building owner signed the application. We did not even have equitable standing in the property. We were under a letter of intent. We have since signed the agreement of sale, and we are equitable owners of the property right now. So did I answer everything correctly? So I hope that answers your question. And I do appreciate everything that was said tonight, and I will say that we will go back with our architect and our engineer and really look at every possibility that we can do, but it will include having 12 two-car garages. I just would like everybody to understand that that's here tonight. We will really analyze everything. I hear everything that was said. I've heard everything that was said tonight, and we will do our best to come up with a solution that is acceptable to this board. It was an education tonight just to listen through, and I think I want to thank everybody, both the board, and I would like to thank the neighbors for coming out tonight and speaking so well. My wife is here tonight, and we understand where you're coming from. So we're hoping that we can be neighbors also and be good stewards of the property and try to bring it forward. That is our hope, and I would offer to meet with anybody here and discuss anything that they would like to discuss with whatever time we have left. Okay, so thank you.
Can I return to one thought you had earlier?
Yes.
You had said that you had looked into going underground and that by doing that, you were encroached into the side yard setbacks, I believe, because of structural issues and some other things.
Yes.
Did you pursue that with anybody to think that you could get relief on that from zoning?
We had an initial meeting with some members of staff, and we didn't move it. Remember, when we look at something, we have to look at it as to what can be done with the current rules and not what is a wish list if you go through the zoning hearing board process, which opens up a whole other element. So we were told what we could do, what the rules are, what the zoning was. In fact, we were told by the owner it was R5, It was only when we had our meeting with the township that we were told that it was switched to R4. And I certainly understand what everybody, there's been a lot of talk about open space. I've done a lot of projects with open space, both in this township and in other areas. And in looking at the property, this is not open space, this is R4, and it has certain criteria, and that's what we work to. So a lot of the things that were said tonight, yes, it's green, it's been used as a combination parking lot, picnic area for all the residents, but it's a separately owned property that we, in good faith, put it under agreement, and a lot of what we heard tonight, we've heard it, as I said earlier, and we will address as best to our ability. But if there's a way to do it without...
Well, let's go further. Let's say there was no questioning zoning. Could an underground parking area be viable if you were allowed to do it?
Absolutely. My architect, we have a plan that shows it. Yes. Yes.
So financially, that would work?
Yes. But we couldn't submit it because it wasn't something that met code.
Well, it's all has to go through zoning to do that, and that's what
I mean, so if it was outside the requirements, we'd be in a variance situation. We'd have to show a hardship to legally meet that standard. I mean, that's way beyond what we're here for tonight, and I know that's way out of bounds, but just to kind of stop it where it is, the whole variance process, we would have to meet legal criteria to move forward on that, and there would be a burden that we would need to meet. And preservation of a parking lot and some grass and green area does not itself make a hardship, and that is step one to a variance. So just to
it may be a little different in an historic area. So that's what I'm getting
a variance standard is still a variance standard, and it requires a hardship
I agree with
in
you.
any district.
I think there's a little discrepancy or wider definition. I hear what you're saying, but I would love to have it be considered.
I'm just saying that we asked you to come up with some options of built form.
Sure.
I'd also like to see some options of underground form.
And we have that. We do.
And go as far as you can with getting information from staff and whoever as to what that process could be, given, say your hardship is a denial from us and from the commissioners, and the project is dead in the water. There's a hardship.
That's not a hardship. A denial is not a hardship. We will review it, but from a legal perspective, what I do not want to happen is to provide some sort of fictitious hope where we can say, well, because this is a historic district, we don't have to show hardship. It may be a different type of hardship we can show. However, denial from a board does not make a hardship. And we will bring you a plan with underground parking.
Well, talk to somebody. Seriously
We'll
about it.
explore with staff what, if any, arguments could be made to that end. I just want to make sure that we don't misrepresent the ease with which that process could be accomplished. We will vet it 100%, both on our side and with staff. We want to do what's right, but we also have to work within the parameters of what we can do.
Can you come up and ask your question, please?
Basically, it's not a question.
No, come up to the podium.
The efforts that are being made here are very collaborative.
Okay, you have to come up here, please.
The efforts that are being made here, Mr. Gentleman, are extremely collaborative. I understand the parameters.
Speak in the microphone so everyone can hear.
The efforts that are being made here between the neighborhood, which is a force. We may not have the side of the law, we may not be white shoe like Saul Ewing, but I will tell you that right now my suggestion is step out of your lawyer's box, get into your solutions box. Because I've been working in legal for 28 years. You can do it. We have someone looking for solutions. Let's go for it. I think it works for everybody.
We've already said tonight that we want to work with you. Again, my position is we still need to work within the parameters of the law. I'd love to step out and think of solutions, but those solutions still need to be within the parameters of the law, and we will explore all of them. If there is an option that we can find that will make parking more palatable, whether it's underground or in some other shape, we're going to find it and we're going to present it, because we understand the importance of a neighborhood and the importance of these people. And we don't want to come in here to fight them. We're here to get their feedback, to get your feedback. If we weren't interested in that, we wouldn't be sitting here. My position is I want to make sure everybody understands we still need to, whether we're in a solution outfit or in a legal outfit, we've got to work within the parameters that we can work within. If we can't just say, well, this would be great if we could do it, it still has to work on our end, legally.
Understood. Just wanted you to look at that hard.
We will look at it hard.
Okay. Thank you.
I just have one question, and I don't expect it to be answered right now, but it's just something to think about. I mean, I'm all for open space, believe me, but if someone were to buy this property, whether it was these people or someone else, it's private property, and if whoever bought it were to, say, put above-ground parking, not as much of it because you don't need as much space for the number of cars if it's just above-ground parking, but if they were to put a parking lot there and then say to the neighborhood, okay, this property is owned by 12 families or 15 families or whatever, you can't use this ground, how would you feel? And I don't need an answer. It's just something that I'm, you know.
But it's something you have to live with.
Because we're.
Historical preservation is key. Keeping the ambience. We understand it doesn't belong to us.
Yeah, because, you know, and again, that's not something historical that we would consider. But it's just something to consider.
Want to come up?
I just have a question.
Come here.
I too live on Luella Court. I just have a question. Is it within the purview of this committee to deny the building on the open space?
Yeah.
From the historical perspective.
Right.
But we are a
Whether it's that
an advisory.
configuration or-
We're an advisory board.
Right.
So we can advise
To the
client. We
commissioners.
can advise the community. But we advise the board of commissioners.
Okay.
Yeah,
They are the ultimate
Right.
decision maker in this.
Yeah, they make the ultimate decision. We can advise
Sure.
what we think is correct, and they may not agree with us.
But my question is, does it fall within the purview of the historic?
Historic preservation or historic evaluation has to do with scale and density and everything in between. It's not only on a single building, but it's groups of buildings and built form versus open space, and that ratio. And so we are within our right to say this has too much mass. It's not right for what we think is, Luella Court is all about, or what the history of it is all about. So we're looking at, we have a proposal before us, we have to comment on that, we have to think about it. We have to look into all avenues of this applicant as to what they have in their head. They've given us one thing. Can they go somewhere else? We just heard about 2 or 3 other thoughts they're willing to think about. It's really, I think we owe them the opportunity to prove that they could do something different or something that you all might like or we might like aside from this. If they're willing to come back and do that, that's.
And I'm very pleased and that they are willing to look collaboratively at this project. I don't think there's a neighbor on that court that doesn't believe that ultimately something's going to happen with that building. And we have no problem with it being him. what obviously we're having trouble with is the loss of the open space and the look of storage units across from our houses.
Understood. Thank you.
I was wondering if over here is where the parking lot is. That's where it's gravel. Just this area right in here.
Speak in the mic, ma'am.
Just this area. Just this area right in here is where it's gravel. The rest is green. Why don't you just take this part of the property and build garages? I mean, it's leased to the township. They lease it for $1.
Well,
You know,
that's
why?
something we could look at, but I'm not sure that's the answer. But
But you know, this is as critical as this is, and this impacts the fewer people. Just impacts.
okay, well, we're looking at the whole property and its ratio. So
Also, there's three other potential buyers for the property, and it's not all or nothing.
understood. Thank you. Anybody else have anything? You want me to start? Well, I think we've got a couple things in front of us here. First and foremost, I think we all agree that this is an incomplete submittal. We wanted to hear this because we had community involvement here, and we also wanted to hear the applicant's side. And this, in order to move forward, it was a good step to probably hear that out. So I think we made that decision to go ahead with it rather than say, you know, this is not an application that's complete, go home. There's nothing good about that. You know, we need to talk this through. So that being said, that's how we arrived here. I think the things that I asked them to bring at the next meeting, if they choose to do that, I've stated before, is the restoration information and also the drawing information that wasn't available to us tonight, as well as some other options. I think that stands, but I think I've got two problems. One is we have an incomplete application, and number two, as I've stated earlier, I think this whole massing and open space versus built form and you know, the scale of things and the view sheds are a bigger issue to me. I'm not sure anything they can come up with that's above ground is going to be something that I can feel comfortable with. But we're not, if we're going to deny this application on not being complete, we can't really talk about conditions or you know, specifics on it, I don't think. So I think I'm just going to say that this is an incomplete application and we have to deny it. And that's my opinion. Anybody else?
Yeah.
All right, so you want to make a motion?
Well, I just wanted to add to what you said. I mean, you know, we are an advisory board, and we're really here, you know, to help with these types of problems. And it's not the United States Supreme Court. And people were here tonight to talk, and we certainly wanted to give everybody the opportunity to speak. And that's what we intended to do. So.
Well, I think that's what you do.
Well,
It's just
I
a
don't
denied
think
application.
we can deny the application, but not the project. I mean, I think it was hopefully a good forum for both sides, if you will, to understand each other and, you know, to see what is really on the plate rather than hearing rumors about it. And, you know, maybe something can be worked out. I mean, so I mean, I certainly don't see this as dead in the water at all, as long as you're willing to come back and show us alternatives.
Is that how we work it?
Yeah. I think we really should reject the application, not the certificate of appropriateness.
Right.
Because we never got one. So I'd like to make a motion to reject the application, which, because of lack of information, as Cam mentioned before, and to reapply for our next meeting with some of the comments, and include some of the comments we discussed today.
So we'll create a brand-new application,
That's
in
right.
essence.
That's
And
right.
We'll reapply,
That's right.
and we'll come with,
It's just as if you submitted before, and it was immediately rejected by the staff, and
sure.
right.
We are very happy that we could have this tonight and hear what we heard. I think it's going to be very helpful going forward. Had we put it off a month, this would just happen in a month, and we'd be a month further down the line. I think we heard good things tonight. We heard some things that could be problematic, but we heard good things, and we're going to go back to the drawing board. To the extent we can make it work, we're going to try, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Could I? Also, there was something said earlier this evening that I think it's important for me to address. When we submitted our application, we actually picked up the application. I had, as I said, a meeting. We discussed undercover garages and everything, and I found out exactly what was expected of us. And I just want everybody in this room to know that what we submitted, we believed to be a complete application. And I also would like to, the comment that was made earlier about rubber stamping, we actually delivered the full application, and if you read the application, it asks for 7 plans by a registered engineer, site plan. We provided the overlay photograph in addition to that, and we also provided our architecturals by Mr. Wentz. And at the very bottom it said pictures of all the neighboring properties, but it didn't ask for 7 sets. So we submitted 7 complete sets of all the plans and a complete set of these photographs that were all labeled. And we did that earlier in the day, and we received a call from staff, and I just want you to know that they were very diligent and they reviewed what we submitted, the plans. Of course, they didn't review the plans themselves, but we were called and said, look, the application is incomplete. We need 7 sets of the photographs. And we got them all together and we hand delivered them that day. And we were told it was a complete application. So, there's things that we just heard today about some issues that were on the plans that could have been more detailed. And that's why we really appreciate the fact that we were allowed to be heard tonight. I really appreciate the fact that our neighbors were able to be heard tonight, because we don't want to do anything that is going to be contrary. It all has to work for everybody. But I think it's important. I don't want anybody in this room to think that Radnor Township did something too quickly. We followed procedure. We delivered everything we were asked to do, and I know that the staff was very careful in analyzing what was there and asked us for the 7 sets. And the only reason we delivered 1 set was it didn't say on the application you needed 7 sets of photographs. So that being said, that's everything I have to say.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
The motion's on the table.
Is it a motion
Yeah, I made the motion.
to
Deny the application.
deny the application? It is?
To deny
Okay.
it, yeah.
All right, I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. All right, next month?
We have Lynn's plans and I spoke with staff. We'll get plans in advance and do everything we can to make sure that it complies.
Did you take notes on the things we asked for, or do you need it? Okay. Okay, good. Thank you.
There's an extensive list that should have been attached to the application form where it goes into detail, the type of information that's required. It's not just a 7 cents of this or that. It's pretty, yeah, it's very detailed.
Again, what we're going to try and do is get things together very quickly and then try and have some pre-meeting with staff that gives us days rather than hours to make, hey, can we maybe see a little more of this? Can we see more of that? So that we can make sure we have everything in as much detail as they want. We want to make sure that we get enough information in front of everyone so that we can have an intelligent discussion about it and then kind of move past the formality of, well, you didn't show this or you didn't show that. We want it all to be there, and then we can get kind of into the real meat of it too. Well, maybe this facade isn't right, or maybe this isn't right, and let's think about these options. I think that's where we have to get. And this meeting was very helpful to get us there, to start that next step.
Well,
So we hope the next one
If you
will be
get us
better.
everything we put on the list, should be fine.
We're going to try.
Okay. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I think we're into old business, new business. You have something? Anything for you? No? Any old business, new business? Anybody? Nope. I think we're going to adjourn.